Walter Benjamin wrote, in Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, "Architecture has always represented the prototype of a work of art, reception of which is consummated by the collectivity in a state of distraction." Although Benjamin recognized this prototypical state, he was keenly aware of the continued complication of seeing, as the modern world created a layered complexity beyond immediate comprehension. Benjamin believed that the film camera could provide a new way of thinking about and looking at the city. He developed a theory of unconscious optics. He believed that the camera would allow us to reperceive reality and therefore be able to critically apprehend what had become culturally invisible. Here, the camera intervenes with the resources of its lowering and liftings, its interruptions and isolations, its extensions and accelerations. The camera introduces us to unconscious optics as the psychoanalysis to unconscious impulses. Fragmentation becomes a way of understanding the space of the modern world. Montage becomes the essential tool for deciphering life. Architecture is losing the battle of image in a media culture that is becoming more distracted and promoting more passivity. The cinemathequetonics seeks to reinsert architecture into the active media landscape. Architecture has the power to become a known mediator only if it achieves unique conditions of reconception and experiential framing. If it can, once again, achieve what Benjamin describes as the shock effect. This activated mediation will facilitate a deeper understanding of self in relation to others and the social space we inhabit. This is the goal. Montage is the strategy. Montage, French for monter, to ascend, mount, or assemble. Montage is the art of assembling individual shots into a dynamic system, leading to a heightened effect. Here we see it in Alphaville.
Alphaville s'était développé à un rythme inouï, en suivant les conseils de ses cerveaux électroniques, qui se développaient eux-mêmes par la même occasion en se créant des problèmes que l'imagination humaine était trop lente à se poser. Les gens venant du dehors étaient assimilés au fur et à mesure, surtout les Suédois, les Allemands et les Américains. Les autres, inassimilables, étaient purement et simplement tués. Je traversais le théâtre des exécutions. Normalement, on asseyait les gens dans la salle et on les électrocutait sur leur fauteuil pendant la représentation d'un spectacle. Ensuite,
Architect turned filmmaker Sergei Eisenstein, who defined the term and was its most passionate defender, practiced what is known as dialectical montage. The shots appear to collide, forcing a viewer to engage their powers of reason to create the necessary connections that bring meaning. A film can present a fragmented data set with confidence, as the human mind has no choice but to construct a whole. In Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, Walter Benjamin said that talkies and architecture were both art forms received passively. But Eisenstein clearly believed that this passivity could be disrupted through the perpetual interjection of discontinuous imagery, forcing the spectator to mount each successive shot. Montage is not simply the technique of cutting shots together. It is a dynamic system for the expression of ideas. It is often confused with continuity editing, the central method by which stories are told in American film.
What's the matter?
Oh, it's Ferris.
What? What's wrong?
What's wrong? For Christ's sake, look at him, honey.
Ferris?
He doesn't have a fever, but he says his stomach hurts and he's seeing spots.
What's the matter, Ferris?
Papa?
Honey, feel his hands. They're cold and clammy.
I'm fine. I get up.
No!
No. I have a test today.
No.
I have to take it. I want to go to a good college so I can have a fruitful life.
Annie, you're not going to school like this now.
Oh, fine. What's this? What's his problem?
Herein, the edit basically disappears, as it is only in service of the next logical point of focus. Ferris Bueller's Day Off opens with a wide shot of a suburban home. We hear the sound of a man and a woman talking. The woman says, "Look at him." Cut to a close-up of Ferris. This kind of editing attempts to dissolve our awareness of the edit, to serve a seamless whole, a hyperlogic filmic totality, more real than actual reality. This continuity understanding of buildings as a tool for sequential view construction has been well explored in the 20th century, but can be traced back to Auguste Choissy's 1898 analysis of the Acropolis. He reconceives the ancient collection of built form as an elaborate series of framing devices deployed along a designed path. His intensive storyboarding of the space and relationships was highly influential to both Le Corbusier and Eisenstein, whose sketched reanalysis we see here. More recently, Jean Nouvel has explored and exaggerated similar phenomenon with the Arab Institute in Paris. He said, "Architecture exists like cinema, in the dimension of time and movement. To erect a building is to predict and seek effects of contrast linkage through which one passes. In the continuous sequence that a building is, the architect works with cuts, edits, framings, and openings." Montage and continuity editing are methods of cutting to express an idea or story. They can be set in opposition to a mise-en-scène understanding of cinematic space, where there is no cut. A single frame in a single shot attempts to contain all necessary information. Here we see this approach in Fellini's 8½. The term mise-en-scène comes from French theater and essentially means to put on stage. Every frame of a film could be understood as a proscenium on which data is arranged. In montage, the story is told with film. The medium is the message. With mise-en-scène, the story is told on film. A single frame attempts to contain the entire world of the movie. The selection of a montage or mise-en-scène approach is really a matter of priority. Movies never fully depend on one method. A filmmaker defines whether the story will be primarily told on or with film. No director has better exploited this hybrid condition than Alfred Hitchcock did in Rear Window. Alfred Hitchcock said of Rear Window that it was a purely cinematic film, but one could also argue that it is a purely architectural expression of a cinematic idea. He sought to create a design mediation by demobilizing the protagonist and locking the viewer's perspective to his single vantage point, and then presenting all the film's action within the facade of the adjacent building. Rear Window challenges cinematic tropes by presenting a rich montage within the mise-en-scène, segmenting the action of different players but presenting them all at once. Hitchcock creates new connections across seemingly unconnected actions for both the viewer and the protagonist. By drastically reducing the realm of experience and then articulating every moment of it, Hitchcock creates a hermetic experiential space that contains disparate data but still seems coherent. Rear Window's climax comes when Jeff Jeffries gets caught looking, when the rear window gets reflected. The critical eye becomes a spectator to itself, and then it is as though the spell is broken. Jeffries suddenly comes into the world with an awareness of his own fragility. He sees himself seeing. He achieves a state of apperception.
Turn out the light, he's seen him.
It is no shock that Rem Koolhaas, the man who argued for a culture of congestion in delirious New York, would find delight and opportunity in Benjamin's observations on the necessary fragmentation of modern understanding. There is surprisingly little difference between one activity and the other. I think the art of the scriptwriter is to conceive sequences of episodes which build suspense in a chain of events. The largest part of my work is montage, spatial montage. In the work of Rem Koolhaas, the apparatus is the eye, the mechanism is physical circulation. Adjacencies are made explicit through the action of crossing them. The montage Kulas speaks of is the cutting of circulation and program against and within each other. This can be understood as a cross-cut architecture, or parallel montage, where the architecture is presenting simultaneity in an attempt to define the richer whole. The intercutting of parallel action in film shows action across space, but in time. Kulas uses novel programming to create similar effects in built space. The architecture aggressively edits the experience of the user through the selective fragmentation of program. The Seattle Public Library manages to manipulate time and space through a multimodal segmentation of vision. You are always on foot while inside the library, yet manage to witness the space at many velocities and from a wide variety of perspectives. The higher elevated entrance provides immediate access to a wide interior landscape that functions as a master shot for the space. One believes themselves to understand the entirety of the structure as they look around. It is complex but manageable. This understanding creates a sense of calm and invites further exploration. The building is a mediator of experience. From the moment you embrace its complexity, you also surrender to its logic. Your vision and body begin to interplay with others. Keeping in mind the dynamic montage as mise-en-scène in Rear Window and the circulatory cutting of the Seattle Public Library, I designed an interior space that I thought might capture these qualities. Although interesting, clearly missing was a strategy to create apperception, a way to manipulate time towards the end of self-reflexivity. Montage uses a disjunctive conception of time to create the shock of criticality. Cinemathequetonics seeks the same effect in space. The disorientation and dislocation of the red passage in the guts of the Seattle Public Library comes close to this, but one must leave architecture to find the most capable practitioner of this kind of thinking. Enter Oliver Eliasson.
The danger with entertainment is, of course, detaching time and referring to space as if it's a picture. And I think, quality of good entertainment is, of course, implementation of time into a kind of a sequential sort of type of experience. So this means that if I succeed, should I say, adding the duration of the experience into the experience and not as a kind of a secondary trail that people have to kind of conceptually think about, then it's successful, and then entertainment or the kind of excitement or the pleasure can carry out consequences. We can take in our surroundings, but we can, as we do that, also be critical about how we do it.
Benjamin saw cinema and architecture sharing the same liminal space between the optic and the haptic, both lending themselves to a passive reception. But the work of Eliasson suggests a break where the shock effect of watching becomes the shock effect of living, the designing of time through the passage of space to illuminate being. Eliasson states that space, without time, is a picture. When architecture attempts to be nothing more but an overwhelming mise-en-scène, a very big picture, it loses criticality, and the essential time-based haptic quality that can facilitate its individuated transcendence into a first-person dialectic.
Thank you for watching A Symphony of Lights, produced by the Tourism Commission. See you next time.
And so, we return to Walter Benjamin and the city, the complex urban condition that demanded a cinematic intervention to become visible. This research of the cinemathequetonic brings a new understanding of spatial montage within the mise-en-scène of life. The cinemathequetonic can begin to deploy the isolated disjunction of montage as a strategic method, so that the city can finally see itself from within, apperception through fragmentation. The task which faced the human apparatus of perception at the turning points of history cannot be solved by optical means, that is, by contemplation alone. Architecture is not an atemporal picture, but it is deactivated by habitual use. The work of Eliasson and Kulas, seen through the lens of Eisenstein, argues for an activated criticality in and with time, where the image becomes a secondary index to a design mediation. Cinematic montage allows the viewer to become at once closer and more detached. At its best, it facilitates a passive criticality. Cinemathequetonics can take this criticality a step further by splicing the self into the scene. the site of immediate reality has become an orchid in the land of technology.